Hello, hope you're doing really well. Today I'm in Hailsham, technically Lower Horsebridge in Sussex, and I couldn't help myself. I found a really interesting Pillbox Variant, which is just in front of me, and I really hope you come along because there's a really fascinating story behind this one. Slight mystery as well, but I'm sure we'll try and figure it out. So stay along with me, let's go do it. Come on. Welcome back everybody. This is a good one, isn't it? So I thought I was done with pillboxes, and then I met this beauty, and I just had to visit this one. So as I sort of explained before, we are in Hailsham, just across from Hailingly and then Lower Horsebridge, and we're properly in the heart of Sussex. And this is an incredible pillbox. Now I'm going to bombard you with information on this because I think it's obviously part of what I do for my channel. First thing we need to know is that actually originally there was two of these. In fact, the other one would have been across the bypass, formerly the bypass, and the stream that you see running along us, or alongside, sorry, is the Cuckmere stream, or the Cuckmere River, which is going across. You see the sort of ditch, and actually at certain periods of time, certain seasons, more importantly, this can get very, very flooded. And even today, even though we've had some dry weather for a little bit, it's actually been quite sort of boggy. And yeah, so today we are just here to explore this. It's absolutely fascinating, to be honest with you, so let's just take a look. That was cool, wasn't it? Wow. Surprisingly a lot, well not surprisingly, a lot of rubbish, but let's just take a look now. So, here we are. Now, I've got to admit, so as I've just sort of mentioned, there was originally another one which was demolished on the opposite side. So actually, if both of them would have worked in sequence, and they are unlike any other pillbox you will see. We've seen a lot of unique pillboxes, and some of the times they've been based around variants of types. So for example, the mega pillbox in Essex, for example, is basically two Type 24s stuck together. We've also seen other unique pillboxes which have been on top of each other. And then we've seen like oast houses, variants of those, but you don't normally see ones that are basically, they're not comparable to any others for any other normal standard FW3 pillbox or fortification works. So we're part of South Eastern Command's Division stop line where we are at the moment, and originally this would have been created by the 38th Welsh Division and probably the reserves actually, and this would have been part of the division like defence scheme really. So obviously when these were all being built, obviously Royal Engineers and stuff, they would have come along and obviously taken, you know, control of this sort of like part of the stop line. Obviously in great times it would have been part of the GHQ stop line. We've talked about a lot of that, and obviously within, you know, delineations of where that is, but this is really unique because really there's a guarded section to this. So you've got steps, which we've just seen walking down into, and then you've got these really big, wide embrasures. Now, that alone isn't necessarily unique or different, for example, but it does give you a huge field of fire. And if you look in between every embrasure, you can see what probably would have been mounted an extremely heavy machine gun, either a Vickers or a Bren. And then we've sort of excuse me, we've sort of spoken about the idea that what I like about this, and I'm going to go really, really geeky on you, because we've spoken about this on when we've talked about pillboxes in general. You see these steps. Normally, if you were mounting a Lewis or Brain or something, you would have a tripod. And we've spoken about this before, especially on Type 26, I think it was. We spoke about the idea that, you know, you'd have these like tripod mountings to mount the gun, so they would sort of lodge in to this. So already we can imagine that there would have potentially been a tripod for this, which obviously gives us even more of a clue that this would have been for heavy machine guns. So you look at that and you think, okay, it's interesting, it's guarding a bit of the river, there would have been a twin on the other side, but there's nothing else to delineate any other interest, but it's so well designed. And also, what gives it something really interesting about this is because you can see the thickness of this, which in all technicality would make it shell proof, as like we said before, you have bullet and then you have shell proof. Now in technicality, the thickness of this, this would have been probably labelled as potentially shell proof, but as we've again discussed before, with the advancements in German artillery, if Operation Seal Line had gone through, this would have all been inconsequential, and we argue the fact that shell proof, it probably wouldn't fire a direct shot, especially these embushes. You're not exactly going to take any form of immediate cover and not get hit. They're probably some of the most exposed embushes, well, they are the most exposed embushes I've ever seen on any pillbox, but they're just bloody well fascinating, and I'm so glad I've come to this one. It was by pure chance. I was just looking through, doing my normal research, and I was like, that's an interesting pillbox. And then when you read the records about the Welsh Division taking over this part of the stop line, no, this would have been quite a heavily guarded area. It starts to make sense, and there was record, like I said, of the twin of this on the opposite side, like I said, which sadly isn't there anymore. But this is just brilliant, isn't it? Excuse the crass graffiti, as we've sort of spoken about with graffiti. I don't mind graffiti when it's in a sort of a reasonable sort of understanding. I have brought a torch with me, but I sort of don't really feel like we need to. But isn't this just a really, really interesting pillbox? But then it's Phoenix history, and as I always said before, like, you know, we've done all the different pillboxes, the standard ones, the fortification works ones, and we've spoken about the use and function. But on this one, there's a slight mystery to it. We like I said, we know who would have probably guarded it and occupied it, and but the way that it is so open on these embushes is so fascinating. Like I said, it's not hard to imagine these steps, or these shelves, shall I politely say, that would have helped mount the gun into position, which I just find even more interesting. I'm looking for any other sort of clues as to anything else that would give us anything to sort of be even more excited about, because it's just pretty cool, isn't it? But I just find this shutter interesting because it's just guarding. So we've basically got a real huge, incredible field of fire. So I mean, you know, in that respect, it's pretty well covered. Fascinating. Let's. I think we've had a really good look inside. I think really now what we should do is obviously take a look properly outside. Come on. Before I leave you, I just wanted to point this out as a really interesting final frame of reference, just to sort of like obviously log the inside properly. I am 5'10", just shy of 5'11". The embouchure gun sights are exactly my face height into that. So obviously, if we sort of take that by opposite, we'd sort of say roughly they're probably about 5'9" in height, and so that means that as a 5'10" man, looking out, I can look straight across. That level of sight is exactly on my eye line, looking right out. And you can imagine with the bulkiness of a Lewis or Vickers machine gun that would have sequentially probably been mounted on one of these, I've got a really good range of fire and manoeuvrability if I was to hold this in place. And this is what I find really interesting about this one. This is really well designed except for the largest of the embrasures, but it gives us a huge field of fire. So you can imagine, I'm holding this gun right now, I'm aiming out, obviously I've got my tripod that supports me. I'm going to feel quite sort of comfortable, or at least sort of like really well controlled of my gun as I'm sort of taking fire on it. I just thought I'd point out, I found that really, really interesting. But let's head outside and just give the final look at it. Okay, so we're now obviously outside and you can see now these loops, which are just beautiful in design. Really, really nice. That is fascinating. The labelling on this was that it was to say that it was for machine guns to place them, but actually, again, apart from everything else that I've scattered in the history whilst talking to you, there's not really much else. We know that because I've seen an earlier photo, you can see that the level probably would have been buried up to that point, so it would have actually had a grass mound. I think actually there was a early Google Maps video that even said that, but because this whole area gets really well flooded because of the river that is there, you can see that, you know, it obviously the water recess obviously can sort of damage this, but you can definitely see a two split delineation between the level of the pillbox, and actually it gives us an even more obvious impression when we're sort of here in this moment. I mean, obviously we've talked about the fact that I'm going by what the records are. As I've said before, I'm no expert on this, but I do find this one especially really fascinating because it is really unique and different. So we're just sort of like logging the obviousness of this and what we can sort of give. So forgive me if there's any pure World War II history lovers. I do feel, you know, please forgive me. I'm trying my best on this one because it is just fascinating and really unique and different. But yeah, as it stands, the other one, you've got the bypass that you can probably hear in the background. It would have been on the opposite side of that. Probably equidistant lengthwise from where we are now to where that was. And as you can see, lots of sheep and horses today. It's absolutely a beautiful day. But like I said, even though it's been dry for a few days, the ground is actually still strangely quite wet. But there we go, everybody. So we've got two main embrasures on this side, obviously covering out onto that field of fire. We've got one embrasure pointing out obviously towards the bypass. Then we've got another embrasure pointing out onto this field, which is basically the main field to Lower Horse Bridge, whatever you want to call it, Hamlet, I suppose, Lower Horse Bridge. Then we've got this one, which I always found really interesting because it's covering the protection of that. Now, we've seen that before on Type 28s, on heavier designed pillboxes, where you do have this sort of shelter within this. And then obviously what's fascinating is obviously when we look down, there are steps on this side, but there aren't steps on this side. And you can probably tell, do you see, look, there's a little gap in there, and I wonder if that was for drainage at some point. Who knows, because I'm sure they would have realised that this still would have been flooded even back then, or got quite wet and damp. You can also see how this is made up with our sort of concrete design. We've seen this before, sort of, you know, it's like a precast sort of design in essence, I suppose, really, but not. We'll argue that for another day. Where it's just our classic pillbox design, very, very thick walls. I mean, you can tell that how thick even that side is. Obviously, I know it cuts off into it, but definitely shell proof without question. So very, very heavily fortified. I wonder if I look at this, because there was a twin over there, that there's every possibility that there must have been some purpose for this. I mean, there was a I'd read something where they reckon that there might have been a potential landing strip. There is a private landing strip, which I don't think dates to World War II, but they'd reckon, I mean, in essence, like I said, if you wanted to land a plane here for whatever reason, you could do. That's not the point of really what I think this is. I just think this is a very sort of, this is almost like a, it almost wants to be like a Type 28, I suppose, in essence, but it just sort of doesn't feel that way. And the reason why is because obviously you've got those shelving points there, which sort of obviously would not be able to fit anything for what we'd need for anything that would be for like a holdfast, for example. But anyway, I've probably blabbed on too much, but I'm just so glad I've come here to see this. Hopefully you've enjoyed it as well. So there you go. Look, in the immortal words of Phoenix history, that was really interesting. I really hope you like that. I really hope I didn't bore you to death. It's a really interesting pillbox, and it is the last of its kind. There are no others that you will see like this at all. Thank you for coming along with me. Feel free to spread the word of the channel. Much love to all of you out there. Stay safe, and of course, I will of course see y'all very soon. Take care. Please spread the word of the channel. Much love to all of you out there. You ready? I think you are. Kapow. See ya.